Hey, what's up, Mavs fans? Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre and post game host on 97.1 The Freak. Appreciate you joining me here on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to subscribe and download to the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak, Inside the Mavs, as I bring you the latest inside news and coverage on your Dallas Mavericks, along with Grant Afseth. Make sure you give the podcast a 5-star rating and also write a review for it for Inside the Mavs. You can download the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods for free. And make sure you subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe as well. Tell somebody that's a huge Mavericks fan or a basketball fan in general to subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here, talking all things Mavericks basketball. We're less than a month away from the NBA trade deadline, as the NBA trading deadline is on February the 8th, and things are starting to heat up when it comes to conversation around your Dallas Mavericks. What will the Mavs do to try and improve on a roster that right now is 7 games above 500, playing pretty well at home right now, doing some really nice things? What's up, Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic doing their thing on a night-to-night basis, especially since Kyrie Irving has returned from his heel contusion. The question is, can this Mavericks team continue to get healthy as they move toward that February 8th trade deadline? And what does it look like for them from a moves perspective? Do they potentially move on from someone like Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been playing at a 6th man of the year type of level? Do you part with young assets like Josh Green or Jaden Hardy to try and improve your roster to make a run toward the top 4 of the Western Conference? All those questions will remain to be answered over the next few weeks. But we are getting some information from Shams Charania of The Athletic, who was on Run It Back on FanDuel TV, talking about the idea that the Mavericks have done and looked into the likes of Pascal Siakam for the Toronto Raptors and Jerami Grant from the Portland Trail Blazers, with Charania going on to say that the Mavericks will look to try and upgrade their power forward position by the time we get to the end of the NBA trade deadline, which is interesting because we thought coming into the year, one of the acquisitions that the Mavericks were able to make was a guy in Grant Williams, someone who could play and guard multiple positions on the floor while being a knockdown three-point shooter. So far, it's been an uneven year for Grant Williams coming over from the Boston Celtics. While there is still time for him to continue to improve, you saw how much better he played against the Minnesota Timberwolves in their statement win on what was Sunday night. The idea is, though, you may need to find another level and another gear at the power forward position. With guys like Pascal Siakam and Jerami Grant is interesting. We'll start with Siakam because, of course, he's in the final year of his max contract. A deal fell apart between the Raptors and the Kings because Siakam said, hey, reportedly, I'm not signing there in Sacramento, which killed the deal. The question will be, what team will Pascal Siakam commit to in order to make it worth it to trade whatever assets you have to give up in order to get him? Because if you're going to be a team, Dallas, that trades for Pascal Siakam, you need to have assurances that he's going to sign with you during this offseason to make it worth your while to trade for him. At 29 years of age, he still provides a lot of scoring, and on the defensive end can help you. You look at so far through 36 games this season, he's got a defensive rating of 114.8. He's a plus nearly 2 in net rating every single night. We know what kind of scorer he is, averaging over 22 points per game, shooting over 52% from the field. So you're going to get a lot from him in terms of versatility, especially on the offensive end, and he's not going to necessarily hurt you in 35 minutes a night playing on the defensive end. So the question will be, what can you give up or potentially give up to get him? I don't know if the price will be worth it for the Mavericks. Shams Charania is saying in his reporting that the price for Pascal Siakam and Jerami Grant may be too steep for the Mavericks, which I'm sure Mavericks fans are not trying to hear, especially now with the new ownership group and the Adelson family and all the money that they've got running around, and Mark Cuban still running the day-to-day operations on what a team could look like under that kind of ownership, who is willing reportedly to spend money. The question will be, how do you handle luxury tax and all of those things moving forward there? But that is something that has to be answered as time goes on. But Siakam and Jerami Grant, as you look at Jerami Grant for the Portland Trail Blazers, has played well. Look at what he's been doing so far this year. And more importantly, a guy that's got a lot of confidence, especially having been a member of Team USA. Grant averaging nearly 22 points per game so far this year, also 29 years of age. Interesting with him is he's already on a monster contract after the Portland Trailblazers thought that they would be able to not only have Grant, but Damian Lillard moving forward. As far as their future was concerned, Damian Lillard said, nope, I'm ready to go, ready to get out of here. He gets moved on to the Milwaukee Bucks, leaving Grant there, who through 31 games so far this year, playing over 34 minutes a night, averaging nearly 22 points per game while shooting 42% from three on nearly 6 attempts per game. So again, a volume 3-point shooter, knocking down shots downtown-wise over 40% from the year. And yes, while he's been scoring the ball well defensively, hasn't been great. He's got a 116.9 defensive rating and overall a net rating of nearly -10 every single night. So maybe a change of scenery for him could provide the kind of motivation for him to get back to the kind of defender that he is, especially for Jason Kidd and this defense, a high scorer that can defend in multiple positions, but may need some motivation given the fact that Portland right now is not in a position to compete anytime soon with the youth movement that they're on. Jerami Grant isn't necessarily fitting the timeline, and it'll be interesting to see what Portland does by the time we get to February 8th, if they feel like moving on for Jerami Grant will help them recoup some assets to be able to move toward a better future while building around guys like Anthony Simon, Scoot Henderson, DeAndre Ayton, who is there as well. So those are the two names that Shams Charania has thrown out there, and I've seen some of the names that y'all have thrown out there, and it's interesting because you look at some of the names that are being considered. A PJ Washington from Charlotte, a Kyle Kuzma in Washington, where he's just getting a bunch of cardio, it feels like, every single night against worst player right now, plus minus wise, in the NBA in Jordan Poole. And also, there's a known commodity by the name of Dorian Finney-Smith, which I'll get to here in just a moment. But ultimately, this conversation that we're having today is very interesting because now you look at a team in the Mavericks who are playing as well as they are, but questions still remain about what their ceiling can be around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, even with the success of Derrick Jones Jr. and Dante Exum, who was trying to get back from his own heel contusion, and the fact that the Mavericks still need to upgrade the power forward position to get some more size, scoring, and length there to help on the defensive end. Or you look at the Mavericks over the last couple of weeks, this is a top 6 team in the NBA in terms of defensive rating. This is a team that's getting after it on the defensive end by getting steals, getting deflections, and causing havoc for opposing offenses. So from a roster standpoint, there are some things that you have liked so far that have surprised you based on what you've gotten from Derek Lively II, who's been a really nice rim runner, shot protector, and a guy that's providing them size and length in the middle while also getting some really good perimeter defense from the likes of Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr. And yes, of course, you've got Luka and Kyrie doing the thing offensively, and even Luka Doncic in this case playing much better on the defensive end. So you're looking for another piece to be able to complement those two and maybe complete what could be a possible big three to provide another scoring threat, especially from downtown, but also defend multiple positions on the defensive end. So let's look at some of the names that y'all have talked about that we'll go over here today. And I'll start in our nation's capital with Kyle Kuzma. You look at his numbers so far this year, averaging nearly 23 points per game. That's pretty good. Shooting 35% from three on nearly 7 attempts per game and getting 6 rebounds. The question becomes, what does he do on the defensive end? Because while, yes, shooting a decent percentage from three, getting buckets on a night-to-night basis on a bad Washington team, he's got a defensive rating of 124.1. That is an overall net rating for him this year of negative 13.2. So a la Christian Wood, the way that he was scoring on one end, he's going to give it all back up on the other end. And again, maybe for him, though, a change of scenery will be good to provide him opportunities around high-level talent and better coaching that will allow him a better chance to be able to flourish defensively. We know what he was in Los Angeles playing with LeBron James and some of those things that happened there. But Kyle Kuzma would definitely need a change of scenery and a much better motivation on defense if you feel like he could be a guy that could help you. Question would be, what do you need to give up in order to get him? I know I'm asking a lot of questions, and I know I've probably said that a few times more than what you've liked, but that's where we are. Lots of questions around the trade deadline for this Mavericks team. Then I go to Charlotte with PJ Washington, who, of course, Mavericks fans had an affinity with throughout the course of the summer, maybe being a name that could be a low-level signing, or excuse me, low-price signing that could help come in and help this Mavericks team. And much like Kyle Kuzma, PJ Washington might need a change of scenery too. Let's look at what he's been doing so far in Charlotte this year. Again, not a great basketball team. So far this season, PJ Washington shooting a career low 42% on 11 attempts per game, shooting a career low 31% from three on nearly 6 attempts per game so far this year. And my man's got a defensive rating of 121.4 and a net rating overall of negative 10.6 while giving you 5 rebounds per game. So a guy who's not shooting the ball well from three, not shooting the ball well on 11 attempts per game, and a guy who so far this year isn't giving you much on defense either. A guy playing alongside guys like Terry Rozier and others, you would think for PJ Washington out of Kentucky, he could utilize another set of circumstances around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and you may not have to give up much in order to get PJ Washington, which may be the attractive part of acquiring him, is that you maybe not have to give up a lot in terms of assets, significant assets, that is, in order to acquire him. Definitely a pick, a second-round pick, and a player should be able to get something done to get PJ Washington. So there's PJ and Kyle Kuzma in that case. And then I get to Dorian Finney-Smith. You say, Kevin, are we really going down this road of Dodo possibly coming back to the Dallas Mavericks, where, of course, he helped Luka Doncic take the Mavericks to the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago? And we saw and we know how much Dorian Finney-Smith is a fan favorite here in Dallas, and, of course, was a part of the trade that netted you Kyrie Irving. But let's look at what Dorian Finney-Smith's been doing so far this year in Brooklyn. Again, an up and down, uneven season for them, where they're building around Mikal Bridges, who's turned himself into one of the best two-way players in all of the NBA. But for Dorian, he's playing 29 minutes per game. My man is shooting 41% from three on 6 attempts per game with a defensive rating of 115.4 while giving you 5 rebounds per game. And again, and most importantly, he's a known commodity for Mavericks fans. And at 30 years of age, maybe still has something left to give this Mavericks team. And I don't know if you're looking at him and based on what he did for you a couple of years ago, I thought that he and me have reached his apex with this team when they went to that Western Conference Finals run. Him and Reggie Bullock played the most minutes in the NBA playoffs during that run for the Mavericks. But since then, has played decently in Brooklyn, and I'm sure getting alongside Luka Doncic once again to finish out his career would be something that Dorian Finney-Smith would be amenable to. And honestly, based on the options that you may have right now, whether it be in the trade market or even if you're looking past the season toward free agency, based on the Mavericks and what they're trying to do right now, focusing in on this year, Dorian Finney-Smith low-key might be your best option. The question, again, what are you willing to give up to get Dorian Finney-Smith to come back here? I would imagine not much. We would see if Brooklyn would try to hold the Mavericks' feet to the fire, knowing that they did a deal to get Kyrie Irving to come to Dallas in the first place and giving up Dorian Finney-Smith to do it. But I actually wouldn't mind Dorian Finney-Smith back here based on what we've seen from him and what some of the numbers indicate from him so far this year. And you don't think he wouldn't be motivated to be back here to play alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving to try to help this team get to the top 4 of the Western Conference, and what kind of leadership he would bring? And he would definitely bring emotion and fire on the defensive end. And most importantly, it can guard multiple positions as a high-level defender, where he's turned himself into one of the better 3-and-D players in the NBA. So all signs, at least for this conversation anyway, point to the idea that Dorian Finney-Smith may not be a bad option among some others. I've seen y'all throw in names like Cam Johnson, Denny Avdia as well. I'm not sure that those would be names that the Mavericks would be interested in. But those names, based off of what we know so far, could provide enough interest and enough spark for the Mavericks to do something. Regardless, though, a move has to be made for this team to continue to increase their ceiling, even as they get healthier throughout the course of the year with the returns of Derek Lively and Dante Exum moving forward here. And if they can, that provides you that much more versatility on both ends of the floor and defensively raises your ceiling as well, where the Mavericks find themselves hovering around 15th to 17th right now in defensive rating in the NBA. Again, an average defensive team that's going to be a team that scores a bunch of points every single night offensively should net you an opportunity to win a bunch of games. And right now, as we have this conversation, 7 games above 500 and playing some good basketball. While, yes, you've padded that record against some bad teams where you've dominated them, you finally got a signature statement win against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the best record in the Western Conference. So now the optimism continues to grow. And what does that look like from an asset standpoint? All of that will remain to be seen. But so far, there are some names and some options. Are the Mavericks willing to pay the price, or are they willing to find some value potentially in a PJ Washington who could use another opportunity somewhere else, or bringing back someone that we all know and love in Dorian Finney-Smith and what he could bring? I guess we're about to find out. But as things start to heat up trade deadline-wise, trust me, we will be having plenty of conversations about what this Mavericks team will look to do to try and improve their roster. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to download and subscribe to the Inside the Mavs podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. Also, make sure you like this video as well and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. You can catch me on 97.1 The Freak as your Mavericks pre- and post-game host every single Mavericks game night as I take you through the rest of the season as the Mavericks try to continue to move forward in the Western Conference. Be sure to subscribe to Grant Afseth's channel at Grant Afseth and follow him on Twitter for all your Mavericks coverage as he covers the Mavericks for Sports Illustrated. Again, my name is Kevin Gray. That's it for this mini-sode of Inside the Mavs here on Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. I'll talk to you later. Peace.